Do you remember that video where the Iranian, that Boer in South Africa, that white Boer, claim that Boer people are not actually Africans?
It's not a matter of black and white, my friend. You really do not understand.
Why?
We are not Africans from Africa. We are white people, the descendants of the British and the Irish and the French people and the Dutch people. We are from Europe.
This is the question. Does colored people, Africans, does colored people African? Who deserve to be called African? You can say South African, we are people of different colors, different races. Okay, if a white man can say, I am not African, we are Europeans. If a white man can say, okay, we are European, we are not African people, we understand. Everybody can say, okay, we knew you guys were not African. Okay, but you have tried to live here for a very long time. Try to pretend that you guys are Africans, that you found this land unlivable. Nobody lived here, so you establish a place here. But we know your history. We know your history of where you come from. But the question is, does South African colored Africans, the colored South African, have been able to identify themselves as colored just because they want to stay close to a white man? Because they think, okay, our skin is not black, right? We are mixed people. We are not black. Because if we say we are black, we are closer to South African blacks who don't have no privilege in this country. But let me remind you something. Between a white man, the Boer, and the colored people, the only one who is the true African is the black. You are not South African. You guys, the white and the colored, are not Africans. Okay? You could be born in South Africa, grew up in South Africa, or do whatever you think make you South African, but nothing make you African. We have to make this clear that you are not African. Okay? Unless your father is a Zulu or one of those tribes that the white man came and find to South Africa, you are not African. Okay? Your father need to be a descendant of African tribes for you to be called a true South African. You can be as close to a white man as you like, because we know a white man is not South African, is not African. He himself already said, we are not Africans. And we know. So, for you to consider yourself African, you need to be black. You need to be part of those ancestry. Because this is not about race. It's about ancestry. Does your ancestors Africans? If your ancestors are not African, you are not an African. You can call yourself South African, but you are not South African, because in order for you to be South African, you need to be African first. And in order for you to be African, you need to be black. And in order for you to be black, your ancestors need to be African people. Okay? One of those tribes of African people. But if you come from Asia, wherever you come from, India, Vietnam, wherever you come from, China, Japan, you need to find wherever you come from, because you are not African at the first place. You are not African. And let me remind you something, because many of you will try to comment that you come to South Africa. You are trying to attack South Africa. First of all, in order for you to become South Africa, you need to be black. And many of you are colored people. You are not black. Okay? You are not African. So you are not South African by origin. So if you think you can be any other color, because you want to be close to a white man, right? You need to be close to a white man. And you have been close to a white man for a very long time. That is good, right? But one day, a white man will go back to Europe, and you will have to find a place for you to go to, because you are not African and you are not black. Because you are not African and you are not black, who you are? You have to find a place for you where you come from. If you come from India, okay, maybe go to India, find your ancestors, find where you come from, your grandfather, your grandmother. You can find whatever. If you come from China, you can go to China, find your ancestors in China, find your ancestors in Vietnam, find your ancestor in the Philippines. But you have to understand, because you have separated yourself from a South African black, you have created a new identity. And that identity is different from South African. And because that identity is different from the real South African, you will have to find your identity and where your country come from. Because let me tell you something. The Boer know where they come from. They already say themselves. We know where we come from. We come from Netherlands. We come from Germany. We come from Britain. We come from Poland. The Boer know where they come from. Okay, but the problem is you colored people. You don't know where you come from. Okay, some of you know where you come from, but let me tell you something. One day, the same that happened in Uganda, where many of the Indians have to go to Europe. They had to be removed and taken to Britain. When that day come, when the Boer had to go back to Europe, you who were close to the Boer will have to find a place for you to go. You have to understand that you colored people, because you have decided to separate yourself from the real South African who are black, you have to find a place for you to go. Because one day, these things will come up. Your identity, as you identify yourself, it will come up one day. So if you like this video and these topics, you can just comment below